Alrighty. Hi, everyone. So it's good to be here with you today. I was not here last week because I was recovering from COVID. It's the first time I and my family got it. So I feel like that was a pretty good run. And please don't worry because I'm past 10 days and I tested negative this morning. So I made sure we could be here with you. But wow, that was like a little bit of a wild ride, and it always is anytime you get sick. And especially I have 2 little kids, and it's just like that. If you're a parent, you know, you can't take sick days, right? So there's that. But it always really is such a humbling experience anytime I don't feel well. Because what comes up for me is just the fact that like you really can't rush your healing process. You just can't. You can't just magically make yourself feel better. You can't magically make your body heal from an illness or an injury. And one of the things, you guys, you know me, you know I'm an astrologer too. And so I'm really into planet Saturn. And there's this thing about Saturn that this quote I love that says that the only currency that Saturn accepts is time. And that is such a huge part of life, in that there's so many instances where we just have to accept that we have to just give something time, that there's no rushing it, that we can exert our will onto it and make it be any different than we want it to be. And we instead have to do our due diligence over time. And I remember when I first started practicing yoga, my first yoga teacher was Sue Elkind from DIG. If you've ever practiced with her, she has this like amazing ability in her body to show you things like, oh, okay, you just move your shoulders up, back, and down. At the time, I was like, whoa, how did she even do that? Like, my body couldn't move that way when I first started doing yoga. And I remember thinking that it never would. And now it does, sometimes, some of the things. But that's because of the time. That our practice evolves and our bodies evolve over the course of time. And the more often that we show up on our mat, and the more time we dedicate to our yoga practice or to anything in our lives, the more progress we make. And sometimes progress doesn't go in a straight line, right? It's spiralic. But when we look back, we can see like, oh wow, yeah, my body is different now. This injury that was debilitating to me 2 years ago is better now. It's not what it was before, but it's different. Things are always changing. And so we'll work with that a little bit today. This concept of putting in the time. So let's take a comfortable seat. And by that, I encourage you to take the time to adjust your seat with props. So you can sit up on a couple of blankets or a bolster, but sit up on something so that when you bring your hands here to the tops of your thighs, that it's higher than your knees. So even right now, I mean, I'm maybe just cutting it. I could really use another blanket probably. Just a little more height to allow my hip flexors to relax. And you can feel that. So notice if you're making changes, if you haven't moved already, like what do your hip flexors feel like now? You could bring your hands like this, like into this part of your body. It's sensitive and tender, and you don't, you know, probably wouldn't want someone else touching you there, but it's your body, so you can feel it. And notice if it's a little tight. And then when you make your adjustment, does it feel a little more relaxed? And then you can move manually, kind of shift your weight to one butt cheek and pull the other one out of the way. There's no better way to say it. And that way you have a nice broad seat and your pelvis hopefully is in a neutral position. Now, it may not be, and it's a little difficult to tell, but you're gonna picture your pelvis because we're working with the hips and the low back today. So this is gonna apply to all class. So your pelvis, you could picture as a bowl, right? Here are the sides of your pelvis, And then there's the bowl underneath. Let's just imagine with your pelvic floor. And so what happens is your pelvis tilts this way and this way, also a little like this. This is called a posterior tilt, where it's tilting towards the back. And this is called an anterior tilt, where it's tilting towards the front. And as you tilt posteriorly, your tailbone, which is here, is going to curve under, right? Does that make sense? When you tilt anteriorly, it's going to be more pointing straight down. So what we want is more of an anterior tilt because most people have too much posterior. That's not everyone. Some people have too much anterior and need a little posterior. So there's no one cue that I can give everyone that's going to work. You have to figure it out for your body. So you'll bring your hands here, just like you're cupping this imaginary pelvis, only it's your real one. And you're gonna just do a little tilting. Tilt forward, feel the anterior tilt, tilt backward, feel the posterior tilt, and notice your tailbone as you do this, and where that's moving, and you can really feel it scoop under. You can really over-exaggerate these movements here. And when you do this forward anterior tilt, you'll reach a point where it's too much and you feel it kind of crunch your low back, especially if you're somebody with a sensitive low back. Do you feel that it shortens, right? With this anterior tilt, the low back gets smaller. With the posterior tilt, it gets wider. And you want to find a balance between the two. So when you feel as though your pelvis is upright, you're going to pause there. And you're also going to feel that on your sitting bones, and you could literally kind of like scooch your hands under there to find your sitting bones, they're round. And on these round sitting balls, you're going to want to be more towards the front of them than the back. So everybody kind of find that. And then bring one hand to your low back. And just notice if anything else needs adjusting. Like for me, after I had 2 kids, I do need a little more posterior tilt, which my whole life before that, I was working towards finding the anterior tilt. But here, it's like a little pressure on my low back, so I have to kind of lengthen the tailbone, right? Do you see that? So it's really about kind of finding this balance in your own body. Does everybody feel like you kind of have it good enough? Because that's the thing about yoga too, is that we could spend the next hour adjusting your pelvis. You should get to a point where it's good enough for today and then be with it. So then close your eyes. And bring one finger, your middle finger, to the center of your head. Lengthen up and allow the center of your head to rise a little higher. And then see if you could bring that point, the center of your head, right over the tip of your tailbone. For most of us, this will mean you're leaning back a little bit. Okay. And then you can let that go and rest your hands on your thighs, gliding them back until your elbows are just underneath your shoulders. And then take a moment to relax your tongue in your mouth. There's this connection between our tongue and our pelvic floor. And so if we have too much tightness in the pelvic floor, we can sometimes feel that there's also that same amount of tightness in the tongue. So take a moment to let your tongue get heavy and wide on the lower palate. Bring your ears, the sides of your neck back in space. And then allow your awareness to settle on your breath. Notice where your breath pulls in your body. If it's a little higher up in your chest. And consciously draw it down below your diaphragm so that your belly rises and falls with your inhales and exhales. See if you could soften any tension in your face. smoothing out those expression lines and allowing the skin of your face to hang slack. Widen the corners of your eyes and let your eyeballs just descend back into their sockets. Mentally let go of anything that happened before this moment and anything that's yet to come. Allowing yourself to spend this time as fully present as possible. Committed to being in this moment, in this room, in the body that you're in, and welcoming whatever it is you may find. And please bring your hands together in front of your heart. And here you can honor your time, all of the minutes and hours and days that you've spent in this body on this planet. You're going to honor all the time unspent before you and the mystery of how much of that exists. And then I invite you to set an intention for your practice today. And perhaps it's to use your time a little differently, to devote yourself to spending it wisely, investing it in a way that is most aligned with your highest self. Your intention can also be completely personal and not at all to do with any of this topic. And then we'll seal in our intentions and begin our class with 3 cleansing breaths. Take a deep breath in and let it go with a sigh. 2 more like that. And then gently bowing your head to your heart. So eyes and release your hands. We're going to come down onto our back. So as you come down onto your back, you can take a full body stretch. Have your strap somewhere handy nearby. You'll lengthen from your fingers to your toes. You could even pick up your right foot, make it longer, reach your toes away from your right fingertips, and same thing on the second side. And then go ahead and bend your knees, place your feet on the ground. Take the soles of your feet together and your knees wide. You could keep your arms overhead if that feels good, or you could bring your arms down by your sides to place them on your body, one hand to your heart, one hand to your belly. And give yourself the gift of time here. Focus on your breath and taking some fuller inhalations and deeper exhalations. Simply allowing gravity and time to work on your body, to pull and tug on your tissues so that the shape slowly begins to open. And if you find that it is too much, then you can put some blocks underneath your thighs to support and take the gravity out of the picture. And notice that maybe as you lay here, that you begin to find a deeper sense of relaxation or letting go, or that a little more tension releases from some area of your body. Inhale, bring your knees back up to center. Hug your right knee into your chest. Extend your left leg long on the ground. You may have to depending on how close you are to your neighbor, you may just have to be mindful in this little series, or you may have to move slightly. But you're gonna grab your strap and take it over the ball of your right foot and extend your right leg straight up towards the sky. Now, if your hamstrings are super tight, then your knee stays bent, and that's okay. But you still put this pressure up into the strap and engage your foot into the boundary that the strap creates. Then take both straps into your right hand. Slide your right hand down the straps until you can feel your shoulder blade connect to the mat beneath you. And then bring your left hand to the top of your left thigh. Encourage your left thigh to root down so that even here, maybe you can find that neutral tilt of your pelvis. So for me, I can tell that I have a little bit too much of a posterior tilt here because I have tight hamstrings. So I have to focus on rooting that left thigh down to find more of a neutral tilt as my tailbone moves more towards the floor. So you're just gonna play with that. Just see it right here. You could do that little pelvic tilt that we did while we were seated. It's not gonna be as big. It's gonna be more of a micro movement. But can you find that neutral alignment of the pelvis or something closer to it? Then take a big breath in, and as you exhale, slowly begin to open your right leg out to the right. Press out through your heel. Your knee could still be bent. You can move it towards straight. Notice if you start to collapse all of your weight onto your right hip. Maybe you don't open your leg out quite as much. Try to keep the weight level for your pelvis and know that that's challenging to do. Inhale, bring your leg back up to center, then change hands on the straps. Bring your right arm out to a cactus arm with your elbow in line with your shoulder. The back of your hand rests on the earth. Take a breath in, and as you exhale, you'll guide your leg across your body over to the left. Here you're gonna roll all the way onto the outer left hip. And then bring your right hand to your low back. We're working towards the low back being perpendicular to the ground. So you really may have to pick up your lower leg, your hip, and do some adjusting here to find that. And when you do find that, chances are your right shoulder may have lifted up off of the ground, and that's okay. You can just rest your hand on your rib cage then. Notice if your right hip is hiking up towards your rib cage, can you press it away and make more space between your right hip and your right ribs? Inhale, come back through center. Bring both hands to the straps now. Draw the shoulder blades onto the back, so you're broadening the front of your chest. Take your navel and draw it down towards your mat. Engage your core, and then take a few little walks up the strap with your hands and a little curl here. Engage your abdominals, breathe. And then slowly release. Lower your leg all the way down to the ground, keeping your abs engaged. And then pause. And notice if you feel a dramatic difference between one side and the other. Most people do. It's all right if you don't. But you just notice, does the right side feel a little longer? Does it feel a little more grounded? Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Exhale, hug your left knee into your chest. So here we notice that just by taking the time to do one stretch, this reclined leg series, let's call it, that we've made more space and made a shift or a change somehow in the structure of our body, just by that small amount of time and commitment. Now take the strap over the ball of your left foot and extend the left leg straight up to the sky. Take the straps into your left hand and then glide your hand down the straps until you can draw the shoulder blade onto your back. Feel that your arm bone is plugged into its socket and connected to the ground beneath you. Bring your right hand down to the top of your right thigh and encourage your right thigh to move towards the earth. You can again play with that tilt of the pelvis. One side may be much tighter than the other, which is good information. And then when you're ready, take a breath in and exhale, open your leg out to the left. Notice the weight spread between the left and the right side of the pelvis and see if you could keep that level. Notice if you started to hold your breath. Can you invite in some deeper inhales and fuller exhales? Inhale your leg up to center. Change hands on the straps. Take your left arm out to the side in that cactus arm. Full inhalation, and as you exhale, guide your leg across your body over to the right. You'll roll onto the outer right hip. And again, check in with your low back here. Could you make it perpendicular to the ground? If your left shoulder pulls away from your mat, then just bring your left hand to rest on your rib cage. You could look out over your left shoulder if that's okay on your neck. And then also notice if your right hip is hiking up, can you press it away, make more space and lengthen your side body? Inhale, back through center. Draw your navel towards your spine. You could imagine that your ribs and your pelvis knit together to engage your core, and then slowly begin to walk your hands up your straps. Little curl here. And then go ahead and release and slowly lower your leg all the way down. Left leg meets the right on the floor. Feel into your body and notice what's different, what's the same, where is there still some tightness, tension, congestion. And then please bend your knees and place your feet on the ground parallel. Cross your right ankle over the top of your left thigh, flex your foot. So here the movement, sometimes in this pose you'll hear a cue that's to move your right knee away from your body. But really the movement comes from the hip. So you'll want to bring your awareness down into your right hip socket and move your right thigh away from your body from there. Feel your low back on the ground. You should feel your sacrum connecting to the earth, and then find again that little tilt, the posterior, anterior, cat-cow tilt of the pelvis here. Do a couple of rounds of those. And see if you could find neutral. Once you do, hold that and pick up your left foot. Interlace your hands behind your left thigh. Press your thigh into your hands. Use your hands to hug your legs back in towards your body while keeping that neutral tilt of the pelvis. So that maybe here a ladybug could crawl underneath your low back. There's a little space for that. And you feel your sitting bones, those round bones that we felt while we were seated upright. They're kind of rolling down towards your mat. Breathe. Can you keep the weight even on the sacrum? And then notice where tension starts to grip. Bring your awareness back to your tongue and your mouth. Notice if you're starting to furrow your brow. If you're starting to clench your jaw. If your shoulders are rounding forward, can you relax them back and down? So here we're just noticing the patterns that have accumulated in our body over time. Recognizing that they take just as much time to undo. Go ahead and release. And switch sides. So bring your right foot down to the ground. Cross your left ankle over your right thigh. Flex your foot. And then bring your awareness into that left hip socket. And press your left thigh away from your body from there. So that then your knee does move. But the movement's coming from the hip and not from your knee. Once you have that, pick up your right foot. Interlace your hands behind your thigh. And here you want your hands in the belly of your hamstring muscles. So not behind your knees. You want to slide your hands down until it's about halfway between the back of your knee and your butt. Take your shoulders back and down. Find that little cat-cow tilt here. Until you can discover neutral in the pelvis. And then breathe and relax where you can relax. So every yoga pose is this balance of effort and ease. Where do we need to engage our muscles to hold the shape strong? And where do we need to surrender and let go? To become a little softer. Go ahead and release. And then hug both knees into your chest. You give yourself a little massage here on your low back. Maybe just rocking side to side or taking your knees in little circles. And then please roll to your right side and come all the way up to hands and knees. Come to a tabletop position with your knees just under your hips or slightly behind. So we're working towards keeping length in the hip flexors. So you walk your knees forward. Everybody do that. Okay, let's walk your knees forward until they're in front of your hips. And then feel with one hand your hip flexor muscle. And then walk your knees back. Put your hand down. You have a little stability there. And then feel that hip flexor muscle. So it should be longer and less tight. So that's what we want. You could even take your knees a little bit behind your hips if that feels best. And then with your wrists underneath your shoulders or slightly in front of your shoulders, so that we have a nice long side body here, you'll start to connect to your breath. And as you inhale, you'll find your cow tilt, where you're anteriorly tilting the pelvis. You're melting the heart and taking your gaze up. So this is a back bend. And as you exhale, you're rounding your back, lengthening the tailbone. You can feel the pubic bone pull up towards the navel, chin to your chest. So this is a posterior tilt of the pelvis. And then just flow with your breath here. Just a few rounds of cat-cow. And then inhale and come to a neutral spine. So neutral spine is kind of like the default that our body settles into. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right neutral position for us. So notice here, if you have too much of an anterior tilt, and if you feel tightness or shortening in your low back and a disengagement in your belly. Notice if you have too much of a posterior tilt and there's a rounding in your low back. And see if you could find this happy place between the two where you could tone and engage the front of your body. Keep a natural curve in the low back and keep it wide. So it should feel like nothing or like no pain, no tightness, neutral, right? Then from there, plug in your arm bones, melt your heart. So let's do a little, this is called shoulder flossing. And you could look up front if you're not sure what that means. Shoulder flossing here, I'm kind of pressing away with my mat, and I'm taking my shoulders, my chest, towards the mat and away from the mat. Towards the mat and away from the mat, but you don't bend your arms. It's just in your shoulders. It might be a little micro movement. So it's like flossing back and forth, right? A little piece of floss. So then pause once you melt your heart, once your chest moves towards the mat and your shoulder blades are drawing onto your back, and keep that. Tuck your toes, bring weight into the inner edges of your hands. So press the bones of your index finger and your thumb into the ground, and then lift your knees just a little bit. Just cover your knees for a second. Engage your core. Floating table. Oof. Okay, you can let that go. And now we're going to do that one more time and then move into downward. So cover your knees just a little and then send your hips up and back, downward facing dog. Notice what happens when you straighten out your legs. So everyone bend your knees and see if you can find that tilt, anterior, posterior of the pelvis with the knees bent. Then go ahead and straighten out your legs. And notice that you can't do it anymore, or if you can, it's very slight. And see if you feel a rounding in your low back. And if you do, that means keep your knees bent and find more of a neutral low back and spine. And also know that if these cues don't land in your body, that's perfectly fine. With yoga, you take what resonates, you leave the rest. Inhale, let's all come forward to a high plank. Push out through your heels. Knees can come down. We'll slowly lower. Shoulder blades stay on the back of the heart. Bend your elbows straight back. Bring your chest all the way down to the ground. Everybody bend your knees here. Pick up your right knee, lengthen it back towards the back of your mat and bring it down. And feel the difference in the hip flexor in front of the hip. Same thing with the second side. So we're creating more space, more length. Then you can extend your legs long, point your toes and press the tops of your feet into your mat. Take a breath in, bring the shoulders up towards your ears, take them back and down. So your heart already starts to lift, your chest is lifting a little bit away from your mat already. And then from your heart, move your chest forward and up into cobra. Tuck your toes and exhale, downward facing dog. Right leg lifts as you inhale. Lunge it all the way forward as you exhale. Step it all the way up in between your hands. Scooch it forward. Take as many steps as you need until your right knee stacks over your right ankle. You can come up on blocks here if you want more space. And then lift your pelvis higher away from your mat than you think. Draw your right hip back and your left hip forward. So this is sometimes called scissoring the legs together. We're just hugging the pelvis, both sides of the pelvis, back towards neutral. Everything in yoga is trying to find Tadasana, trying to find that neutral alignment. Extend and lengthen your spine, heart moves forward. Breathe. So as you keep hugging the legs in towards each other, then you can start to sink the pelvis back down towards the mat. But only if you can keep pressing your left thigh up against the sky. Then left hand comes down. It could even come onto the floor off of your mat. And inhale, sweep your right arm up. Exhale, release, downward facing dog. You can stay right here in down dog. You can move through a vinyasa. You could find child's pose. And then from down dog, you'll inhale your left leg to the sky. Exhale, lunge it all the way forward. As many steps as it takes. Use blocks under your hands for more space, if you so desire. Lift your pelvis higher than you think, away from the ground. Draw your left hip back, your right hip forward. Once you have that, you can sink the pelvis back down towards the earth. Shoulder blades on your back. Lengthen your sternum, gaze forward. Breathe. Then right hand comes down onto your mat or the floor. Inhale, sweep your left arm up as you twist. Exhale, release. This time, step your right foot forward. Keep your knees bent as you fold. So unless you have really, really open hamstrings and you can keep a neutral curve in the low back, we're all going to keep a little bend here in the knees. Inhale, lengthen to a flat back. Exhale, bow in. We'll do that 2 more times. Press down into your feet. Inhale, reach your arms all the way up to the sky. And exhale, hands to your heart. Face forward towards me on your mat. Grab your strap. Find Tadasana here, mountain pose, with your feet parallel. So most of the time, people kind of turn their toes out and have too much external rotation in the thighs and the hips. So you're going to widen the heels. Find this neutral. And you can take your feet a little wider. And grab onto your strap. Arms are straight. And your strap is a little taut. Now take an inhale and start to lift the strap up. It comes overhead. And you'll find a point where maybe now you need a little more space on the strap. Maybe this is as far as you go, depending on the tightness in your shoulders. But see if you could take the strap all the way back behind you without hyperextending the arms. So keep a little bend in your elbows. Inhale, come all the way back up, and exhale back down. So this is another variation of that shoulder flossing. Breathe. And the next time you inhale your strap up, pause here, take a deep breath in, and exhale, reach out and over to the right. Inhale back through center, exhale, reach out over to the left. Come back through center. Go ahead and bring your arms down, So this next one. Okay, so for this next one, you shorten your grip on the strap a little bit and bring your arms up into cactus here. Elbows are bent, in line with your shoulders. Good. Now take just your elbow tips forward. Do you feel what happens to your shoulder blades on your back? They draw into your back a little bit more. It should feel like a lot more work. All of a sudden you're like, wow, this is hard. Okay, you're doing it right then. Keep that as you can start to straighten your arms up. Breathe. A few more breaths. And go ahead and just shake that out. Okay, you can let go of the strap now. Let's take our feet wide over here. So once again, you want to find mountain pose with your legs. The tendency is that most people have their heels come in slightly. So widen your heels, maybe a little more than you think, yes. And let's play for 1 second while we're here. So bring your hands onto your hips, right? Which isn't up here, it's not the top of your pelvis. Your hips are down here where your femur bones go into your hip socket. And then turn your toes out and just see what you feel. Feel your hip socket kind of pop forward, your femurs move forward, everything shortens in the back. And then take your heels wider. Do you feel that internal rotation of the femur bones? Yes, it's just like, okay, I'm feeling how my body's moving here. What movement do I want to find before I make this next shape? So we want to keep this neutral pelvis. You want to feel that your low back is broad, because if you do this again, not again for me, and then bring your hand to your low back, do you feel that it's shorter? Right? Even exaggerate it and kind of push your pelvis forward just a little, don't hurt yourself. And you feel that it shortens even more. So now, take your feet back to parallel, and do you feel the difference? The widening of the low back, that's what we want. Keep that, take a breath in, shoulder blades on the back, just like you had your strap here, and hinge forward, halfway. Notice if your shoulders are succumbing to gravity, resist that. Resist the heads of the arm bones away from the floor. Draw your low belly in. See if you can keep that space in the low back. Maybe you stay here, or maybe you continue to pull forward. You could bring your hands down onto blocks or onto the ground, or you can stay right here, hands on hips. These are both forward folds. One is not better than the other. Inhale back to halfway if you fold it all the way in. From the back of your heart, inhale, come all the way to stand. Then turn your right toes out and bend your right knee. So we're going to notice what happened with the alignment in the upper body. Bring one finger to the center of your head and line up the center of your head with your tailbone. So again, Tadasana, right? Take your arms straight out. Take your gaze out over your right middle finger. Look down your front knee. Track your knee open so you can see your big toe. Flip your palms. Draw your shoulder blades onto the back of your heart, just like when you had your strap. And keep that palms face down. Draw the belly in. Breathe. Bring your right forearm to your right thigh. Extend your left arm out in line with your ear. Inhale back up, warrior two. Exhale, hands to your hips. Turn your right toes in, your left toes out. Bend your left knee. So the tendency is to kind of lean forward over the front leg. We want to bring the center of the head right over the tailbone and create that neutrality in the pelvis, even here. Take your arms out in line with your shoulders. Gaze out over your left middle finger. Breathe. You can flip your palms and draw your shoulders onto the back. And then bring your left forearm down onto your thigh, your right arm on the line of your ear. Inhale, come back through warrior two. Exhale, hands to your hips. Straighten your left leg, turn your left toes in, and one more forward fold here. So you take your time to set yourself up. Inhale, lengthen through the spine. Exhale, hinge from your hips. Fold forward. Pause once you're halfway and check in. Is this my pose today? Should I change the shape and fold more? Inhale, lengthen halfway. Hands to your hips if they're not there already. All the way up to stand. Step your feet together. And let's do a tree pose here. So you'll bring all of your weight into your right foot. Engage your right thigh. Open your left knee out to the left. And decide if you want to keep the ball of the foot down on the ground here. So your foot can come to your ankle. It can slide up to your shin. It can come up over your knee to your inner thigh. It just can't be on the side of your knee. And then hands to your heart. Find a focal point, a drishti, something that's not moving to help steady. Press your foot into your leg back into your foot. See, from that, you can grow a little taller. Yeah, and then reach your arms. And then go ahead and release and shake it out. We'll do the second side. So bring all of the weight into your left foot. Take your right knee out to the side. And then decide where you want to be on this side. It will probably mirror what you did on the first side. And then when you find a little bit of steadiness, a little stability, you could bring your hands together in front of your heart. Find that drishti, that focal point. If it's lower onto the ground, it'll be easier to balance. If you want to challenge yourself, you can take it higher and then reach your arms up. See if you could find that extra length and height by pressing your foot into your leg back into your foot. And then release. Take your feet outer hip distance apart, and this time turn them out slightly. Little external rotation here. Bring your hands together at your heart. Imagine you have a stack of books on your head and keep them from falling. Take a breath in, and as you exhale, you'll start to bend your knees, coming into Malasana, a squat. And you just do your best here. And then go ahead and release, come to sit. Take a block or two, have them handy by your mat. You want a drink of water. Now's a good time to hydrate. Come all the way down onto your back. Knees bent. Feet on the ground. Inhale, reach your arms overhead. Make space in your side bodies from your hips to your fingertips. And keep that. Exhale, bend your elbows in by your sides with your fingers up towards the ceiling. Little robot arms here. You're setting up for a bridge. Root down into your feet, especially the inner edges of your feet. Inhale, lift your pelvis. Take a block and slide it underneath your sacrum at whatever height is best for your body. You could even use 2 blocks here, both on the ground with our short edges together, if you want more of a broader base. The block should support the sacrum, that bony triangle that holds the sides of the pelvis together. It shouldn't be on your low back. It shouldn't be on your tailbone. You want to find that sweet spot where you could fully surrender the weight of your body into the block. And then your arms can come down by your sides with your palms face up. You can close your eyes. Take your shoulder blades, wiggle them underneath you a little more. Take the time to make any adjustments that you need so that you could feel a sense of ease in your body. Or at the very least, this could be a position and shape that you could hold for a length of time and commit to being in. So if ever there's pain, numbness, or tingling, that is your body's way of telling you that this shape does not currently serve you. And you can come out. Be here for just one more minute. Check in to see if there's anything that you could let go of or release. Press into your feet, inhale, lift your hips. Move the block off to the side, and exhale, bring your pelvis all the way down to the ground. Take your feet as wide as your mat and knock your knees in onto each other. You could play with how close your feet are to your seat or how far they are away. In constructive rest here. Inhale, bring your knees back up, but keep your feet wide. Take your arms out to a T or to cactus. Take a breath in. Exhale, drop your knees over to the right. Look out over your left shoulder. Inhale, everything comes up to center. Exhale, knees to the left. Gaze out over your right shoulder. Inhale, everything back to center and just flow here with your breath. Do one more each side. And then inhale, hug both knees into your chest. Take your knees wide. Take the soles of your feet up towards the sky and find happy V. So you could grab onto the pinky toe edges of your feet if that's available to you. If not, you could grab onto your shins or your ankles, or even wrap your arms around the backs of your thighs. You could rock side to side. And then whenever this pose feels complete for you, you can make your way into Shavasana. If your low back feels at all sensitive, you could take a rolled blanket or a bolster underneath your knees. You can use as many props as you like to make your Shavasana as comfortable as possible. I'll offer Reiki on your ankles today. If anyone does not want to receive Reiki, you can just raise any limb now, and I will just skip you by. Once you set up in Shavasana, let your feet gently open to the sides. Have your arms down by your sides with your palms face up, so that you're resting on the middle finger. The tendency is kind of to be more towards the pinky or the ring finger. So take the shoulder blades onto your back a little more. Take a deep breath in, a full breath out. And as you begin to surrender into Shavasana, take a moment to remember that time is a currency. And how is it that you want to devote and spend it? On what do you want to devote your awareness and your attention? And can you take time here to commit to that? Please. All awareness back into your body as you wiggle your fingers, toes, begin to move and stretch in any way that feels best on your body. You can take your arms overhead and take a full body stretch. Hug your knees into your chest and roll to your right side. Take a moment here to pause, to honor this time that you've devoted to yourself, to the care of your body and mind, to your practice, to your breath. Honor yourself for this devotion. And then when you feel ready, you can begin to make your way back up to find a comfortable seat. And once you arrive, close your eyes. Draw your hands together at heart center once more. Take a moment to call back your intention that you set at the beginning of class. Feel free to modify or change it in any way to carry with you off of your mat and back out into your life. Perhaps it's just to devote more time and attention to rest, to patience, to allowing the natural process that unfolds with our bodies and our lives to happen without the need to control or rush in. Hold your intention here close to your heart. We'll seal it in and end our class with a final cleansing breath. Take a deep breath in and let it go. Gently bow your head to your heart. The light within me recognizes and honors this very same light in each one of you. Namaste. Thank you all so much for your practice and for being here with me today. It's wonderful to have you. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You do Reiki?
I
here?
do. Bye,
Thanks.
Debbie. Thank you.
Bye.